I've come into my front garden to show you these dog bags that a neighbour up the road leaves in my garden here, so I can do these tests with them. And these bags are all around the base of this pawpaw tree. So I'm going to take these out the back now and show you the easy way to compost them. I've just emptied these 2 pots because I'm going to show you now 2 easy ways of getting rid of dog waste in compostable dog bags. In this container, I just emptied it a few minutes ago. It had been full up with weed waste that I'd just let rot down in the garden. It has 5 or 6 holes in the bottom, has one really big one and a couple of smaller ones that I drilled in, but I actually think they should be nice and big like this, because I think this size they get a little bit clogged up. And in here are some worms that were in that waste that was decomposing. This is full of worms. I didn't put them all in, I put many of them back in the garden, but I'm going to use this as a starter and just to keep those little guys covered a bit so I don't put dog poo directly on them. Let's put a smattering of grass clippings over there. These bags have been sitting in the front garden for quite a long time now, and they've hardly decomposed at all, but I think the waste inside has probably dried up. So what you want to do is just cut your bag like that, tear it open and drop it in there so the bugs can find their way to it. So cut it open. There's a few old ones there. You want the bugs to be able to get in, so cut it open, drop it in. This one's fairly fresh. Oh, you can see there it's coming out there, but that's okay. Cut it open, make sure they can get in there. Here's a couple of really old ones that have been out in the garden too long. They're really dried up, but I'm sure there's probably dry waste in there. It can be decomposed. When you come home from your dog walk, cut it open, drop it in. That one's open. Here's a baby recyclable bag that a lady dropped in my garden. She had dog poo in it, and when I looked at it before, it had holes in it and all the poo's gone, so something's eaten the poo, but the bag's still there, and we'll put it in here just to see what it does over time. I'm going to save a few of these for the next experiment. So basically, cut it and drop it in. That's it. Now you're going to cover this with anything you want. Old bills. I found these, they're from 2011. I think they've had their day. So junk mail, anything. Now you can see I don't go to too much trouble, I just scrunch them up. Don't bother shredding them. You can if you want to, but it'll break down really fast if you do. I've got this rubbish bin full of weed waste. This has been sitting under the house, just drying out. I did that as an experiment to see what would happen, and not much happens other than it drying out. See that? Very dry. So, add it to your pot. You can put as much in here as you want, but if you can, only up to about that level, so you can then cover it with grass clippings or leaves or something on the top to keep all the moisture in. If this was in the garden, I'd probably water it, but because I'm just showing you what to do, I haven't watered it. You don't have to water it because the rain will wet it anyway, but watering it just gets it off to a good start. So I'll water it after I do the video. So how much you put in here is entirely up to you. Oh, I forgot. I want to put some food waste in there too. Let's make a little hole. I've got this container of waste, and I've been trialling this to see how they would work. And you have to put a bag in it to stop the bugs getting in it, because the bugs get in through those little holes there created by the lid. You see just one flew out then. These have been on the sink for quite a long time. Oh, and you can see that some of the juice is going through the bag now. It's eating through the bag. I'd say these have been on here for easily 4 weeks. Not the tomatoes, they're fresh. easily 4 weeks. So I'm going to stick that waste in there. And actually, you know what? I'm going to leave this bag in there as well and see how that decomposes as well. So let's just dump it down the bottom. Yeah, I just flicked it on me. Well, there's some nice stinky waste. Now we definitely need to cover that. And then I'll go and put that back in the garden. Well, this one I've just emptied, and it had the compot in the centre and only one hole. Again, I think you need to put in about 5 or 6 big holes around the base so the worms can move up and down freely through that. I'll just put some weed waste on the base just to give me a base to put this pot. I've got all my ingredients here that I want to add to it. I've got my pot there, I've got my dog poo there, I've got some food waste there and vegetable waste there, and more waste and water in there, which is mainly cat food. And I've got some grass clippings to put on top and a whole bunch of weeds. I'll show you the weeds in this bin first. This was quite full a little while ago, and I've had this sitting under the house where it doesn't get any rain because I wanted to see what would happen over time, whether it would break down at all. And it pretty much hasn't broken down. I mean, it's dried out. As I've often said, if your food isn't wet, it will dehydrate rather than decompose, which is what this has done. It's just dehydrated. Nothing in there but dry weeds. And of course, there's no connection to the ground, so no worms could come up there and even start the process. If you were going to do it in a bin like this, make sure you've got holes in the bottom. And make sure you wet this before you leave it like that. You don't necessarily have to, but it will work better. If it rains a lot in your area, you probably won't need to wet it. It just depends how wet or dry it is at that time of the year. Back to our pot. Then I'm going to add my pot. This is the pot I took out before. And now I'm going to pack my weed waste around the outside. Here's my dog poo now. So I'm going to cut these. And the dog poo has unfortunately pretty much dried up. There's nothing in there, so I'll put that straight around the outside. This one has dried up too around the outside. There's nothing in that either, I can feel it. I'll just cut it so the worms can get in and finish it off. Nothing in there either. Now these were the bags that had been sitting underneath the pawpaw tree, and they've been there for months and months on end. There's a bit of dry poo there. Now normally that would be wet. If you'd just gone for walks with your dog, that would be wet. Oh, this feels like not wet, but pebbles. Yeah, look at that. Oh, there's the dog poo there. So the dog must have done a poop on some gravel, and the owner had picked up the pebbles and dirt with the poop. Oh, there's one's a little bit wetter. Again, this feels like gravel and poop. I'm going to keep these scissors outside now so that I don't use them in the kitchen anymore, since I'm cutting these bags up with poop in them. And the reason you want to cut the bags open is so the bugs can get at the poo. And if you're burying it, oh, that one's really dried up. If you were doing it with just the pot on its own and the dog poo and all your waste, you definitely need to just cut the bag and dump it in. This is a way of doing it with your poo in the centre and your plastic around the outside. And again, It really needs to be wet dog poo, and I haven't got any because I've obviously timed it very poorly to collect it. But I've got all the bags. That's what's important, to see how long they take to decompose. There's still quite a lot of space in there, so I'm going to pack some paper around it. You don't need to shred this paper, but you can if you want to. It will decompose faster if you do. However, you've got to go and buy a shredder then. So just by doing this, you don't have to shred anything. Put some more weeds around it. This will need to be wet after I've finished it, so I'll water it with the hose to make sure all the paper gets nice and wet. Now for some fresh veggie waste. That was from yesterday, so it's pretty fresh and it hasn't been soaking in water. And I've got this bag. I'm going to see, actually I'll put it near that. I'll put it near the label so I can remember where I placed it. So I can find that again and see if I can find it in the waste. Now I've got this here. I found 2 potatoes on the kitchen bench. Look at that, stinky, stinky. I wonder what was smelling, but that's the story of my life. Rotten food somewhere in the kitchen. So I'm going to put the bag in there as well. There's a bit of other waste I collected, and this is all the other waste I've collected, and it's not a lot. It's only a bit of greaseproof paper and mainly old cat food and water. I hate that cat food, it stinks. I came prepared with some water today, so I'm just going to give that a little swish around. And I'll just dump the rest of this water around the outside. There, the juice is running out. Put it on the bottom of my video, I don't want that. Smelly juice on my video. So you can see it running out there. And that's what it does in your garden. It runs into the garden and feeds your plants instantly. I've got just a little bit of paper waste left here, so I'm going to finish packing this around just to get rid of this handful that I've got. And I put everything around my pots. Junk mail, cardboard from takeaway containers. I generate too much cardboard, and I think most families these days generate so much cardboard because everything is shipped these days rather than, well, not everything, but a lot of what we buy now we buy online and it arrives in a big cardboard box. And what do you do with that? Well, you can cut it up, soak it in some water and put it around your pots. Or if you think you've got too much, if you put it in your council bin, it will eventually end up getting recycled somewhere. So I don't worry too much about the cardboard because I know the government and the council have ways to recycle cardboard. I think they send them off to big compost companies. But if you want to do it all yourself at home, you can absolutely do it by doing it like this. Just wet the cardboard before you pack it around so you can squash it around easily. And that also makes it easy for the worms to move through it because you've got little holes and gaps everywhere in it. You could put soil around there if you want, but I don't bother. I want to get rid of all my waste. Block your lid on. Now, don't cover this with soil. If you want to cover around the outside with soil, by all means do that, but don't cover your lid because you want that odour to get out on the air to attract your soldier flies. And if you cover it with dirt, they won't be able to smell it. So now, my favourite cover ever, grass clippings. And that's actually still left a few little holes where water can run through and wet all that paper. I might just put a little bit more on top though, only because I've got the space really. Actually, let's dump this on. And that gets rid of that. And I'll just cover that with some grass clipping. And hopefully, because that plant is so dry, it won't sprout, but you never know until you test it to find out. And I just thought of something else. I might just pack that all to one side there, and I've got this little bit here of the weed waste. I have hundreds of leaves in my garden. Just scrunch them all up. Leaves take a really long time to break down, so if you scrunch them up they'll break down quicker. There's a little bug, I'll put him in there. He'll help with the composting. If you think you're in a really bit of plastic, well, let's just shove that down there. It looks like it's decomposing. If you live in a really windy area and you think that's going to get blown away, then just wet it. And then once it all mats together, it should hold. So now I'll move that back into the garden. Pot's in the garden now, one from the other day. It's already dropped a little bit. If you're using your pots every day to add your dog waste, you don't need to fill the whole thing up. Just put some dog waste in, a bit of grass clippings. Next day, put some more in, a bit of grass clippings. So you'd layer it up over a period of time. Once you get to the top, just leave it. Or you collect a whole bunch of it, like you saw me do, and then put it in all together once a week. Cover it up with your grass clippings. Next week, do the same thing. Then just let them rest, or just keep chopping them up. And that's it. This is the same experiment I did in a rubbish bin months ago, and you can see I'm just breaking the bags up and dumping it in the bin and then covering it with some grass clippings, and that's it. 70 days later, here's the bin. I've topped it up many times with garden waste in that time, and now I'm going to remove that dry waste because I didn't cover it, to expose the part underneath to get to the doggy bags. I'm just having a quick look to see if I can find any of those plastic bags, and all I could find was one bit of a knot of the bag. And I'll just leave the video running to see what is underneath. This is how beautiful that soil is under there. Magic. And there's the big hole I've got in the bottom, and these holes are very poorly cut, but it didn't matter. Let's have a look and see what's underneath. There's a little wormy. There wasn't much to see here except beautiful soil, lots of little bugs, a few worms, and the knotted part of a plastic bag, which takes longer to break down. Sorry, a bit more. It's not bad. I had a lot of bags in here. If you had a nice pot in your garden, not an ugly bin like I've got there, but a nice pot, and you put your dog poo in it with your compostable bags, and break the bag open because the bugs need to be able to get at the poo to break it down. And this has been 70 days. Now somewhere in that time it decomposed. I don't know in what time, because I haven't checked it every week. I am seriously happy with that result. I think that's a pretty damn good result. There are worms in there, see? There's quite a few little wormies. And this could be a little bit moister quite easily, but it's okay. It's not bad. I bought these little kids rakes the other day, which I thought would just be perfect for this kind of job. And you can see a few plastic bags in there, see? Look at that. It's not a bad result. Let's just cover those up some more again. Spread it all around, water it in well, and that's it. Thanks for watching.